So where you start a meeting saying, any conflict of interest, let's just accept that there's been decades of deception through our governance system. And so whether you accept or believe any of my views, I'm coming here presenting evidence and I'm being ignored. Council is not doing the job it's obligated to do, so we shouldn't be funding it.
And to accuse others, here or elsewhere, of despotic use of power, I think is inappropriate. And that's my answer. Thank you.
So, what's that all about, you might ask? Well, Carinna went back to the council to attend the cabinet meeting which was held on the 9th of April to express her opinion and raise some genuine concerns. In his response, Councillor King seemed to be more concerned about the language used and failed to respond to any of the issues raised. However, it's good to see that there are others out there who hold similar views and are in seats of power. Before showing the meeting, I would just like to show a part of the speech given by the President of Argentina to the United Nations at the Pact for the Future event in September 2024.
For those who do not know, I am not a politician. I am an economist, a libertarian liberal economist who never had the ambition to engage in politics and who was honored with the position of President of the Argentine Republic in the face of the resounding failure of over a century of collectivist policies that destroyed our country. This is my first speech before the United Nations General Assembly, and I want to take this opportunity to, with humility, alert the various nations of the world about the path they have been following for decades, and the danger that implies if this organization fails to fulfill its original mission. I do not come here to tell the world what it has to do. I come here to tell the world, on one hand, what will happen if the United Nations continues to promote the collectivist policies that it has been promoting under the mandate of the 2030 Agenda, and on the other hand, what values the new Argentine Republic defends. Now, at some point, and as often happens with most of the bureaucratic structures that we humans create, this organization stopped upholding the principles outlined in its founding declaration and began to mutate. An organization that had been conceived essentially as a shield to protect the realm of men transformed into a multi-tentacled leviathan that seeks to decide not only what each nation state should do, but also how all the citizens of the world should live. This is how we went from an organization that pursued peace to an organization that imposes an ideological agenda on its members regarding a myriad of issues that pertain to human life in society. The model of the United Nations that had been successful, whose origins we can trace back to the ideas of President Wilson, who spoke of a society of peace without victory and was based on the cooperation of nation states, has been abandoned. It has been replaced by a model of supranational governance by international bureaucrats who intend to impose a certain way of life on the citizens of the world. What is being discussed this week here in New York at the Summit for the Future is nothing other than the deepening of that tragic course that this institution has adopted from a model that, in the words of the United Nations Secretary himself, demands the definition of a new social contract on a global scale, doubling down on the commitments of the 2030 Agenda. I want to be clear about the position of the Argentine Agenda. The 2030 Agenda, although well-intentioned in its goals, is nothing more than a supranational socialist government program that aims to solve the problems of modernity with solutions that undermine the sovereignty of nation states and violate the right to life, liberty, and property of individuals. It is an agenda that aims to solve poverty, inequality, and discrimination with legislation that only deepens these issues, because the history of the world shows that the only way to guarantee prosperity is by limiting the power of the monarch, ensuring equality before the law, and defending the right to life, liberty, and property of individuals. It has been precisely the adoption of this agenda which responds to privileged interests and the abandonment of the principles outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations that has distorted the role of this institution and set it on the wrong path. Thus, we have seen how an organization that was born to defend human rights has been one of the main drivers of the systematic violation of freedom, such as the global quarantines during the year 2020, which should be considered a crime against humanity. A toxic relationship has also been promoted between global governance policies and international credit organizations, demanding that the most marginalized countries commit resources they do not have to programs they do not need, turning them into perpetual debtors to promote the agenda of global elites. The oversight of the World Economic Forum has also not helped, where ridiculous policies with Malthusian blinders are promoted, such as zero-emission policies, which primarily harm poor countries, and policies related to sexual and reproductive rights, when the birth rate in Western countries is collapsing, signaling a bleak future for all.
The United Nations seems to be involved in everything. We found a bit more, which I'll show later. Now back to the meeting.
I come here having watched in confused horror at the authoritarian response to COVID. Something had shifted. Common sense, evidence-based and medical ethics discarded.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
Individual risk-benefit analysis ignored. Propaganda replacing informed consent. A sensible playbook for managing outbreaks was abandoned for illogical lockdowns. Taxpayers' money squandered to have people incarcerate themselves at home. Our vulnerable elderly sentenced to life in solitary confinement. MPs, media, local councils all failed to challenge this despotic overreach. Councils reinforced baseless claims that compliance and social distancing protected people from coronavirus, a distinct lack of critical thinking. Outright stupidity, some might say. This persists. Government agendas springing from baseless ideology, not evidence or logic. No effective safeguards exist to protect the public from financial, physical or mental harm caused by political whims or eerily communitarian ambitions. 2 years ago, an MP told me, if you think the propaganda the public gets is bad, see what the MPs get fed. Makes sense. Convince MPs, Parliament legislates, for example, net zero, propagandise councils with carbon literacy training, attempt to elicit societal changes that a fully informed public wouldn't desire. Email exchanges about EMF harms robustly evidenced demonstrates councils' failings to uphold the principle, among others, of objectivity, evidence-based and free from bias.
This is an email sent to Councillor David King from Eileen O'Connor, who is the co-founder and charity director for the EM Radiation Research Trust.
Despite having been provided evidence showing lower speeds actually increase pollution and collision risk, the Council pushes 20's plenty, a movement started in 2007 which conveniently aligns with a global to local agenda to control travel. 20 miles an hour speed limit near schools during school hours makes sense, but ideology, not evidence, is recklessly driving this unsupported mandate. Councillor Julie Young stated, I was instrumental in bringing in 20 miles an hour to Lower Wivenhoe, and I want to see this rolled out across Colchester. This is a desire which speaks to neither public need nor that little, often forgotten thing, consent. Essex County Council's case-by-case approach is sensible, yet spending decisions are swayed by financial pressures and government policies that favour profiteers over people. The report advocating wider 20-mile-an-hour adoption claims it will make neighbourhoods safer and healthier, but where's the evidence that counters that presented to Council in October 23? The implication that lower speeds inherently improve safety or health lacks substantiation. Whilst funding billions to save another country's democracy, the marionettes championing the idiocracy tout the million we'll save by cancelling ours. I will lawfully be exerting my constitutional right to withhold council tax until the pervasive corruption issue has been addressed. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot in there, isn't there?
Yes, a lot of genuine concerns, aren't there?
I'd just be ready to quote some of this back to you. Look, you exercise your right of free speech here and in full council and elsewhere because you live in a country that allows it.
Really?
But if anybody was to listen to the string of substantive points you're seeking to make, they would think that was not true. Marionettes, ideology, not evidence, despotic power are amongst the things that you've made a remark of.
Those words and definitions seem quite in line with what we've seen over the last 5 years, don't you think? We have some clips to jog your memory, Councillor King, but first of all, here is somebody who understands how the government actually works.
If you think of two roles, right? The Foreign Secretary in Great Britain and the private secretary in the PM's office responsible for foreign affairs, an official whose name has never been in the newspapers. That person was like 10 times more powerful and important than the Secretary of State was. And I think this is something which people just don't really realise. And it's part of like how the whole system has become fake. So you have fake meritocracy, fake responsibility, and then fake cabinet government. So they all walk up Downing Street, the cameras whir, they pose, they smile, ha ha, I'm going into the most powerful meeting, aren't I great? But it's all nonsense. The cabinet is just a kind of stage theatre. And actually officials in the cabinet office have already decided it all. When you sit in Whitehall now, right, in meetings, they are literally scripted. So when the Prime Minister has a meeting with ministers, what happens is that before the Prime Minister has that meeting, officials go into the Prime Minister's study and they give him a folder. And in the folder at the front is a thing called Chairman's Notes. And that's the script. And that's what the Prime Minister reads out. And the conclusions for the meeting are in the Chairman's Notes, drafted before the meeting happens, right? So the Prime Minister says, hello, Secretary of State, blah, blah, blah. And then all these officials sit around the sides on chairs around the edge of the room. And then the MP, the Secretaries of State, all look down at their folders because they've all got their scripts, right? And this is why I use the NPC meme, right? Because then the Prime Minister reads out, well, we're here to discuss blah, blah, blah. And then he goes around the room and then Secretary of State for Justice or the Foreign Secretary reads out his bullet points and then he reads out their bullet points and they read out. If anyone goes on a script, you see the officials sort of go and then look over at the other official inside the room and kind of go, that means we'll come back to that after the meeting and make sure that doesn't happen. And then at the end, it was a fascinating, great discussion. Thank you so much for your wonderful, insightful, original contributions. And then he reads out the conclusions which are all drafted in advance. And it sounds like a parody, but it is literally how the British state functions.
We're planning to make full vaccination the condition of entry to nightclubs and other venues where large crowds gather.
Anyone who lies on the passenger locator form and tries to conceal that they've been in a country on the red list in the 10 days before arrival here will face a prison sentence of up to 10 years.
People have got to understand vaccination is going to be, in the end, your route to liberty.
Everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things. Here are all these freedoms that you have. Because otherwise, people are going to go out and enjoy these freedoms anyway.
If you're not vaccinated at the moment and you're eligible and you've got no health reason for not being vaccinated, you're not just irresponsible. I mean, you're an idiot.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus. Someone on your street, at your supermarket, or in your park is highly likely to have COVID-19. Do not go out unless absolutely necessary. Do not meet up with anyone outside your household. Do not put the lives of your loved ones in danger. This is a national health emergency. Around 1 in 3 people have no symptoms and are spreading it without knowing. Keep your distance. Exercise. Don't socialize. Stop the spread. Stick to the rules. If you bend the rules, people will die.
I think what's important to understand is over the last 2 years, there has been the promotion of unethical psychological techniques to encourage behavioural change, such as the use of fear, artificially increasing the sense of being afraid in order to get people to change their behaviours.
Not only are there tens and tens of thousands of people there, and not the hundreds that the BBC reported, but also they're all different colours, and they're all different ages, and they're all different shapes, and they've got all different banners, and they're all different sexualities, LGBTQ flags, the whole lot. And so to then sell that as a far right rally, well, hang on, I can see a hijab there, all the colours of the rainbow, And so they struggled with it.
Now, of course, you didn't see this, I'll bet, on CNN. You didn't see it on MSNBC. You're lucky. I don't even know if Fox covered it. Look at these numbers. Apparently, mainstream media can't even count. But of course, they can't have you know that you are sharing the world with this many like-minded people. And that's what we're going to celebrate today, is how many of us are out there, what really is the truth, and how long is this cabal by a tiny group of conspirators going to last?
The challenge is that the false positive rate is very high. So only 7% of tests will be successful in identifying those that actually have the virus.
Pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
Build back better.
Building back better.
To build back better.
To build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build it back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Well, it means that we're going to have a lot of building back to do.
Some would say to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
As we seek to rebalance the urban-rural divide and the need to address rural to urban migration, the physical implementation of secondary city plans is one of the areas that can have the most positive impact in the coming decades.
Even in Colchester there were unlawful arrests. This group of peaceful protesters, who are law-abiding and not war-abiding, were arrested, it seems, because they were holding Russian flags. The fact that over 100 flags were on display did not matter. Eventually the charges were dropped and all the peaceful protesters received compensation from the police for wrongful arrests. Whilst talking about wrongful arrests, we will never forget the amazing Jeff Wyatt. He was one of the first to be arrested at Speaker's Corner while standing up for his constitutional right.
Possibly ever. The excess deaths in 2022 and 2023 is that scandal. Its causes are complex, but the novel and untested medical treatment described as a COVID vaccine is a large part of the problem.
Oracle Films have made a must-watch documentary about the Covishield scandal. I will post the link in the description below. Now going back to Councillor King.
Don't accept them. You're in a democratic place that's giving you space to pursue your views, regardless of actually what you've just said, objectivity and evidence. I will stop there. I know you'll have something you want to say. Carinna, to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. When you mentioned free speech, we've still not had a comeback on why that person got shut down. So obviously free speech is allowed providing it's conversations that the council doesn't find annoying. So first point, you do shut down free speech. Thank you. You could have informed the public about the changes with the council tax demand. So it seems like deliberate, with regards to the proposed changes that are happening. So it does seem deliberately that information's withheld. I'm looking at the Nolan principles, and I do appreciate you're really in a tight squeeze between the public and where you're being pushed. But is it even possible for any councillor to meet the Nolan principles of integrity? Perhaps an independent, but not if you're answering to a political party, or if you're a member of a Fabian society, or if you've done a secret Freemasonry oath, for example. So where you start a meeting saying, any conflict of interest, let's just accept that there's been decades of deception through our governance system. And so whether you accept or believe any of my views, I'm coming here presenting evidence and I'm being ignored. Council is not doing the job it's obligated to do, so we shouldn't be funding it.
Well, that's your personal choice if you choose not to, but I want to be very clear, and I will have the last word on this. Your language is inappropriate, frankly. You're talking to representatives elected by the public.
Free speech. Sorry, my language is inappropriate. Sorry, go on.
It's not a place for conversation. You've made your point and you've repeated it. I just want to be very clear that your views on how we operate are not, in my view, appropriate in their repetition or their manner. We don't shut people down. We do provide information on things that matter repeatedly. We do provide an opportunity for you and your colleagues to say what you will, frankly, whether we like it or not. We respect your right to express your view, and I'm entitled, in my view, on behalf of government to say, whatever your views of it, it is a system that allows you and others to flourish, frankly, whether you feel that or not. And to accuse others, here or elsewhere, of despotic use of power, I think is inappropriate. And that's my last word. Thank you.
Do you agree with Councillor King? We'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Liz Truss recently spoke about what goes on inside government. Here is a short clip and we will provide the link for the full interview if you'd like to watch it.
I think, look, I don't think there is a conspiracy of people trying to orchestrate the British government, but what there is a severe case of groupthink.
Okay.
It's very influenced. It was influenced by the EU when we were a member. It's now influenced by the sort of you might call it the Davos elite, but the acceptable thinking amongst people in corporations, people in government departments, people in the mainstream media, the US State Department. When you see what's coming out of USAID and the project they're funding, that is the way this thing operates. But it doesn't operate by a single person in a dark room, with puppet strings. It's been a takeover of Western democracies by an elite group of technocrats who think they know best.
We have come across some more institutions that are linked into the United Nations and the WHO. These are the ISWE, the Global Citizens Assembly, Demos, which is linked into the Citizens White Paper, and One Health. Hopefully the councillors, especially Councillor King, will be able to tell us more about these. Is devolution really just an illusion and it's all really about global governance? On a positive note, Carinna is shortly going to be speaking to Stephen Thomas, who had a win at the High Courts against Cheltenham Council with regard to 5G masts. That is really going to be crucial for the citizens of Colchester in view of the council's plans for 5G and the Internet of Things. Finally, another piece of good news is that the long-awaited film produced by Mark Sharman, made by Oracle Film, called The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future, will shortly be released. I'm attaching a link for the trailer. It's really important. Please watch it. Thank you.